In the last 10 years, I've grown every site through organic search, 100%. This is a chart from February. We're now at, let's see, let me go to May. We should be nearing 500,000 uniques per month. Yep, we crossed it actually in May. This has been growing by 100,000 new visitors every single month, which is crazy. And the way we're doing it is 100% content. We are scaling through content. So if you have a website established, content going out, and you have traffic, that is the time to think about a newsletter. I would not do a newsletter if you don't have a website and you don't have traffic, right? Because those things, if you think about a business with building blocks in mind, and kind of like you're structuring your house here, right? You got to have the right layer first. So your foundation is always your website. It's getting traffic to that site, building that up, and then adding on different pieces that we can get more traffic from. So those more additional pieces are, you can do so many things. There's so many marketing channels, right? And I know right now in Blueprint, we're pushing LinkedIn, which is great. I think LinkedIn is such a great place to get traffic. So I would align with that. And I'll actually show you how to sync your newsletter up to LinkedIn, because that has been a huge opportunity for me as well. That we're on issue 22. And the reason I numbered them is all of the people at the top of newsletters, Justin Welch and Hanley are a few. They have issues, right? It's very clear. And that's for a reason. They're numbering their issues to reinforce, hey, I'm doing this consistently. I've done it 140 times. And that's a good reason to subscribe. So what I try to do with the newsletter, because the power of story, and I know I've been seeing this in our Slack threads here in the community, people talking about it, which is really cool. The power of story cannot be underrated. It is incredible. So whenever you tell a story about an experience you had and you can relate it to your clients and what they care about, that is so powerful. So let me show you what that actually looks like. And I'm going to pull up. Okay, this is probably one of the more shocking stories I've told. And what I try to go for is that shock value. If you can capture people with a pretty wild story, they're going to remember it. And so what I noticed when I was on these calls with our users was they were referencing the most wild stories, and they were saying how much they related to it. And not only that, but I also heard them say they sent it to other people. And that was when I knew, okay, we have something here. Whenever you can create memorability to where people are talking about it just because it's that good, that's amazing. You've really hit a vein. That's memorability, and that's marketing that's not going to be forgotten. That's pretty cool. So the two stories that I've done that have created that to where I get on a call and people are referencing that story in the call. These are the two stories. So one of the first ones, the first ever keynote that I'm giving in a couple weeks, this one got me that keynote. This story, unbelievable. This person said, you got to tell this on stage. So this was the story. The title is a little bit thought-provoking. A writer's call to arms. And then in the story itself, I'm talking about how I went from pretty much anti-AI in December of 2022 to now working inside AI. And what I did was I just got really personal about the truth of that story. So you can't hold back, right? You really got to go for what really happened, even if it makes you look really ridiculous. Like, those are the kind of stories people want. And whenever I've seen a few of the people that I work with more closely, whenever they've repackaged this to sell it as a service, they've gotten to know their founders, the clients that they work with. So they're getting these stories from the marketing directors, the founders, and the people that have these life experiences that are relevant to that audience, relevant to that client base. That's really important. You don't want to just tell random stories. You really want to get it relevant. What are they interested in? So here I am in AI, and the past experience that I had coming to AI is pretty crazy. I was literally on stage saying AI is not going to touch the human writer. I bet my life earnings on it. It's never going to be as good as me. And then in January, AI is actually as good as me, if not better. And I admitted that. Right. So that is a pretty powerful story because it does a couple things. First of all, it's a lot of vulnerability. If you've ever read or heard of Brene Brown, I fully believe in everything she talks about, how vulnerability is one of the best areas of feeling you can ever touch because it creates so much trust and it creates so much openness. Wow, I can really respect this person. They went there. They were vulnerable. So I believe in that. So that's why I tell all the stories. So the story did that. It was very relatable, very open. I've heard people describe it. Just this morning, somebody reached out who was recommended to me based on this same story that we're going over right now, continues to have impact. It's crazy. And this person said, and I quote, "This was a very raw and real story." So if you can hit that very raw and real, you've got something. And how to tie it to your client base is it's got to be something they care about, right? So if this was a story about my favorite food dish in Austin, that's going to be a little bit harder to relate to AI. But this story was very obviously about AI. Here I am, anti-AI and now pro-AI. So if that's the case, you have something that's relatable. So don't think very clearly. Don't overthink it. Don't get too lost in the details. Just be very clear. Am I talking about AI? Okay, I'm in AI. I'm talking about AI. That's the story I'm going to tell. All the stories are going to revolve around AI. So whatever you're in, if you're in SEO, tell the SEO stories. What SEO failures, successes, wins. I saw LinkedIn. There's a guy called Tim Hansen. Definitely follow him. He tells the best stories on LinkedIn. And he talked about how he was sitting at WeWork and he overheard a founder talk about how their SEO person said, "If you don't have $80,000 to spend on buying a domain, I can't work with you." And this Tim Hansen was appalled. He's like, "You don't need this fancy domain to do good SEO. You just don't. That's a lie." So then in the break room, he went to this person and said, "Hey, I overheard your whole conversation. You can hate me or you can love me. Here's how I can help you." Thought that was an amazing story. So what experiences like that have you had? Use that in a newsletter to build trust with your audience. And this is such a great service to do for others. So this particular story is, again, it was me going through, and I've told this story so many times, so don't underestimate the power of the same story. I told this story in a video, a blog, another blog. So I had told it already 4 or 5 times, but here I am still telling it in the newsletter. I haven't sent it to our list yet. So this story is, first of all, we preface it. How you write stories are so important. I'll tell you, like I have seen huge potential, but the copy fell completely flat. So what I can do is Google Doc this and I'll share it in Slack afterwards so you have a template to follow. I don't know about you, but templates, examples, they are life. Really help a lot. So you want to think about a framework for your story. And what I usually do is I lead with a point. So like a main point, and then I go into the hook, what's going to keep them engaged. And then we reinforce and we pitch. So for this overall newsletter, here's the structure of it. So we're pulling in our best content. That's usually a YouTube video. Maybe it's 3 YouTube videos because we're a little crazy with content. And then it's usually a blog as well. So that is the content that we serve inside of the newsletter. And then it's CPAs, right? So we want whatever we want people to do. We want referrals to the affiliate program. So that's our focus. We want to build those affiliates. And then we want more SEO case studies so we can tell the stories of people using AI to grow their SEO. So that's how our newsletter wraps up. But up here, this story is, and it doesn't have to tie into your new content. It doesn't. And I'll show you what that looks like. So these are the 2 stories. We're going to go back to this one, the writer's call to arms. So this one was the same story I had told multiple times, but I found something to keep it fresh. So I was on Twitter, and this is important. Like as you're doing market research, or you're really just reading Twitter, reading LinkedIn to pick up on what is being said in your industry. That's important. So that will give you these stories. So here's one that I got. I was scrolling Twitter and I literally tell that as the story. As I scrolled Twitter. So first of all, I'm talking about the story I've told before. I'm just outlining it, right? And I'm starting it out with, hey, I want to tell you how to think instead of what to do. And so that's a little different because usually it's here's a technique, here's a tip. So we're prefacing this with some kind of engaging little summary. And that's important because you actually want to get them interested in what's coming. Oh, so we're not going to talk techniques today. We're going to talk about how to think. Okay, I think I might keep scrolling. So that's what you want them to do. So then I summarize that story because I want to tell that again. It's so important. It's going to be relevant to the new way I've positioned that same story. So now I go down and I'm talking about, okay, here's the actual story. As I scrolled Twitter, what did I see? I saw this writer worried about their job. And then I thought, that used to be me. And that's relevant because I've told the story up here about how I used to be anti-AI. Like I literally didn't believe AI was ever going to be good as a good human writer. And now in January, I found a content at scale and I completely adapted, saved 7+ hours per blog. And now content at scale is writing the majority of all of my blog content and I'm just editing it. So I tell that story. And then I'm talking about the Twitter thing that I saw, the tweet. So what I'm talking about, this is important, is my thought process. All right. We're not just telling, I saw this Twitter thread and here's what I said. So you got to walk them through your thought process. So here's the thought process that I shared. And you really want to tell a story. You want to build it up. So as I scrolled Twitter a few days later, what was the first thing I saw? A writer worried about their job. I thought they used to be me. But here's the thing I know to be true. Fear isn't the right approach. And if you have writing skills or writers in your team and agency, you are in an extraordinary position to resell writing as a service and make bank more than ever before if you learn how to use AI now and begin to cut back drastically on your time and costs. And if you run a business, you can be a 10x content machine at way less cost and headache than it used to take, but you can't bridge that gap if you're too afraid. So we're driving home a main point and we're building up to it. What's our main point? That fear isn't the right approach. So as you're thinking about your story, like what's the main point you want them to learn? And it should be something that you learned yourself that was critical to your own journey, your own success. So for me, fear isn't the right approach. Okay, so how do I build that out? Here's what I saw on Twitter. A writer was fearful. So then I actually have a screenshot because I'm not just going to scroll Twitter and see a writer that's afraid. I'm going to reply to that writer and tell them not to be afraid because that used to be me. So I'm very involved in this topic. I want to drive it home. I want to help people. So I actually have a screenshot of what I shared with that writer. And this tweet like went around. It had over 3,000 views in a couple days. So you're doing a few things, right? You're looking for stories to tell, which turns your brain on to start thinking differently as you scroll social, right? Like social media, I will tell you, it is such a trap. It's a trap of consumerism. Like we just get lost because we don't think like a creator. We think like a consumer. And that is the wrong way to approach social media. Instead, you should be looking at it. How can I add my voice in a way that creates impact? Let me look for opportunities. So anything that you have clear points on that you care about, for me, it's, I used to be a writer that was anti-AI. I can't be that anymore. Times have changed so much. So now I want to help other people adapt. So what's your place? What's a place you can speak from to help other people? And as dramatic as possible, the better. So don't be afraid to say something that's really out there and makes people, really? What? I never thought of it that way. Because that is what creates memorability, which is this whole thing is about that, memorability. If you get stuck in people's brains, it's amazing for business. And it really does more because it creates impact. And I really believe in impact because it furthers your business more than just a sale can do. It really does. Okay. So as I look at Twitter, as I look at social media, I'm thinking, how can I be a creator, not just a consumer? So that's really important. Start scrolling LinkedIn, all these places, and think about how you can add your voice. Something that helped me was a few years ago, I just sat down and journaled. What are some beliefs that I have? What are some breakthroughs that I've had? Like, for example, this fear thing, right? If you're acting from a place of fear, that's going to hold you back. So how can you pivot? How can you escape that fear? That is a talking point. So your beliefs are huge for driving content creation, adding conversation to social media, and then turning that into stories. So here we are creating content from that content, but that's the way to do it. So we're talking about how not to just play defense and succeed, but really playing offense. And that's where I end, because that's my ultimate point. Here's AI. We can't escape it. We can't avoid it. So it's time to play offense and embrace it, add it into our services, adapt, learn how to adapt. Yes, I know it's painful, right? We've done things human only for so many years, but hey, if I can do it, you can too.